My story in collecting photographs goes back to the days in the old map shop. So that would be nearly 60 years ago. Initially it was maps, old engravings, drawings of Galway city. But then gradually I became interested in photographs as historic documents. And so I've been collecting photographs for over 50 years now today. And I am just as interested today as I was 50 years ago. Thanks to Creative Ireland and thanks to Galway City Council, we went to visit the Mercy National School. Now, I assumed walking in that these would be 6th class, that these would be 11, 12-year-olds. But no, they were 1st class. I am going to show you some photographs in a while. I'm going to talk to you about the city that we all live in and its history and how far back it goes. But first, I'm going to take off my jacket. Okay, the level of interest was the same. It was wonderful. And the enthusiasm. So I brought with me some photographs, but they were all relevant to the area. They were all within a stone's throw of the actual school itself. And the significance of this was these were images of places these kids walk by every day. There were some of the school itself, there were some of the kids in the school, how they dressed, for example, 100 years ago. That intrigued them. So I found the Mercy experience just a joy. It was just a joy because it was bubbling with enthusiasm and inquiries and did you take all them photos, or things like this. And some of these people are of Indian or African extraction. It didn't matter. It was wonderful. There was the level of interest.
For Tom Kenny to come into our classroom was such a special experience for the children. He brought photos of old Galway and he engaged them through storytelling. He let them ask questions. He really, got their attention straight away. They were so engaged and interested to find out, who are the people in the photographs? Where are they today? Does this building still exist? Is it, the same? Is it different? They were just so encaptured by the whole experience and the storytelling that Tom brought to our room. Then to be able to take those old photographs and go on our trail around the city ourselves. It's really their city, this is where they live, but they saw it through totally new eyes.
Given them copies of the photograph. I've left them with the class. So for example, if they go to the Garda Barracks, which is almost next door to the school, the photograph I had is of an historic 19th century brick building. And it was historic, but it's not there anymore. So it'll be very interesting to watch their response and reaction to that. They'll have the photograph, but what they're looking at is completely different edifice and building, shops and things like that.
It's really their city, this is where they live, but they saw it through totally new eyes. To be able to bring the photograph to the location today and really, contrast them and see that it's not the same, things are different. It really developed a sense of place and a sense of time and continuity for them, that things change and evolve.
One of the photographs dates from about 1880, and I brought it just to show them how people lived in those days. And it's of 4 shawled women. These are women who would have lived outside town in places like Rahun or Newcastle. And these were women who were very good knitters, and they would knit socks. And they had a sock market. That's what it was called, the sock market. It was actually in front of what was Joe Young's mineral water factory, part of which is now where Blake's pub is today. They were selling the socks. The money they got would buy particular kinds of groceries that they couldn't get at home on their own little plot or their farm, things like sugar or tea or whatever. But it was to show them how some of their ancestors might have lived, or how they helped the family budget by simply knitting and selling socks. It was just a different kind of life, and almost 150 years before these kids. The Mercy nuns were invited to Galway in 1840, and they're there ever since. They've made a huge, phenomenal impact on the quality of life in the city in many ways. The kids were intrigued because the sisters were there before the famine. They were feeding hundreds of children every day during the famine. There were a lot of orphans there at the time, but also as these girls grew up, and it was all girls in those days, they were training them in lace making, how to wash clothes, how to cook, simple things that might get them a job as maids or whatever elsewhere. And this was not the kind of education these kids are getting. And this intrigued them as well. But it puts it in context. The town hall is still there. The building that was their school is gone. It's completely changed. It's been replaced in the 60s with what's there today. But there's still this element of history in that there was a tunnel, and still is a tunnel, from under the school, under the road, into the Mercy Convent across the street. Now, they were all fascinated by this. I hope maybe someday they'll be allowed into the tunnel. There's a photograph, for example, which intrigued me, of the Franciscan church. Now, this is across the street from them. They all identified it immediately. But then I asked them, do you notice any differences? And then they began to look very carefully. And then they realized there were no trees there now, today. There were back in those days. I remember those trees vividly. There were also railings in front of the church, on the road, on the street. Now, these aren't the hugest significant, but what we're getting them to do is to look at the photograph, not just to see it and then forget it, but to look closely at it and to spot changes and how things have moved on a little bit. They haven't moved that much in the case of the Franciscan church, but the trees are gone, the railings are gone, but they identified it. And again, that's what you want, is their perception of it. Shops and things like that. It'll be fascinating to see the response, and hopefully some of them will go home and say to their father, do you know where we were today? It's important to kind of get the kids at an early age to just inject a little bit of interest, intrigue into them that may get them to do a bit more digging and research themselves, or ask their parents, or talk to their neighbours, or ask the teachers. But they are going to grow up hopefully these kids will all have phones soon, so they will be able to take photographs themselves that hopefully they'll maintain as they go through their lives. And it's wonderful to be able to instill a little bit of that here and there in people and the history of this city and environs.
It's just been such a wonderful experience working with Creative Ireland and Galway City Council on this project. And they asked so many questions. They really wanted to know, they were really in the role of historian themselves.